Welcome again, everyone. I'm Bill Schaefer. I'm the Director and Planning Manager with the Greater Madison NPO staff. Thanks for joining us today for this informational meeting on Connect Greater Madison, the update to our regional transportation plan. Before we get started, just a few things. One, just to let you know, all participants are muted. Please put any questions or comments into the Q&A section, not the chat, as we go along. If there is a quick clarification on a slide during the presentation, we'll try to answer that. Otherwise, we'll respond to questions or comments after the end of the presentation, which will take about 30-35 minutes. The presentation slides and the recording of the webinar will be posted on both the NPO website and our dedicated regional transportation plan website by the end of next week. So first, just wanted to start and do a quick poll to kind of find out who's joining us today. We'll give you 30 seconds here to identify yourself.
This is multiple choice, so you can choose multiples if you'd like. Okay, 10 more seconds and then we'll close it.
Okay, so got quite a mix today. Looks like, obviously a lot of local county government staff, as well as interested community members, some elected officials, consultants. So nice mix. Appreciate that. Thank you. It's nice to kind of know who our audience is. Okay, so just real quickly before we get started, just a brief background about the NPO for those of you who may not be familiar with us. As the designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or NPO, we lead the collaborative regional transportation planning process with the adopted mission and vision that you see here. The map on the right shows the official planning boundary for the NPO, which includes about 90% of the county's population, but we obviously must account for travel in and out of the metro area, as well as within this area. The NPO is governed by a 14-member policy board with representation as shown here. The NPO coordinates with federal and state agencies and county and local governments to ensure development of a coordinated, connected regional transportation system that is consistent with shared regional goals and policies, recommendations, and strategies outlined in our regional plan. And then finally, just a graphic here to highlight the NPO's primary responsibilities. In addition to providing a forum for regional transportation decision-making and preparing the regional plan, these responsibilities also include leading or supporting other special plans and studies and approving federal funding for projects through adoption of our transportation improvement program. Finally, the NPO manages a program to promote sustainable transportation options called Round Trip. Also, just as you see on the right there, I want to clarify and point out that we're strictly a planning and funding agency, and so we don't design, construct roads or bike paths or operate transit service. So with that, just again, a brief background about what the regional transportation is and what it covers. It's a framework plan that covers all modes of transportation, sets guiding policy, and identifies future projects, studies, and strategies to be implemented. Project recommendations, particularly for large projects like state highway corridor projects, are refined through corridor or mode specific or topic specific plans, and then ultimately through design studies. This plan update will build upon recent and ongoing MPO, Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and local projects, plans, and studies. These include an MPO intersection traffic safety study that we're currently finishing up now in working with the University of Wisconsin. The Beltline Flex Lane project, which is under construction now, most of you are probably aware of. And then also Metro's Bus Rapid Transit project and the associated transit network redesign study. Federal rules require the plan to be financially constrained, so it isn't just a wish list of projects, so we have to account for that. And then also wanted to point out that the plan that is designed to support the regional development framework in the preferred growth scenario that was developed as part of that ongoing effort that was built from local plans, but through a lens of the framework's priorities and strategies. This graphic shows the general plan development steps, public engagement opportunities, and schedule. We're currently in phase 2 of the plan process that you see in bold highlighted there. Forecasting future travel, developing and evaluating projects and strategies. We anticipate completing a draft plan early next year with adoption next spring. Just to recap what was covered at the first public meeting this summer, for those of you that weren't able to join us or listen into that recording, we explained the scope and purpose of the plan, explained the relationship of the plan to the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission's Regional Development Framework, reviewed population, household, and employment forecasts that are driving both plans, the preferred growth scenario that the transportation plan will be designed to support, and also reviewed information on the current transportation system and its performance. I am now going to turn it over to Colleen Hosley from our staff to review what we've heard so far through our public engagement.
Perfect, thanks, Bill. We partnered with 3 organizations that work with traditionally marginalized and underrepresented communities to host and facilitate focus groups with their residents, members, and clients in order to gather feedback that we knew we would be less likely to receive through the online survey and public meetings. Next slide, please. The common themes we heard from speaking with these groups was the burden of high costs of owning a vehicle and a desire for more frequent and convenient public transit to help reduce transportation costs. The feedback from the focus group participants is enlightening as it calls out the impacts that transportation and accessibility have on economic development, sustainability, and individual or family's ability to participate in the larger community. We are happy to report that the Bayview Foundation, which was one of the groups that we had the focus group with, recently got in touch with us to let us know that based on the focus group with their community, where it was noted the difficulty for residents to access affordable grocery options, they are in the process of writing a grant to create a grocery store shuttle for their residents. An online public survey was launched to obtain feedback on people's perceptions of the transportation system, views on priorities and important issues needing to be addressed, and support for policies and strategies and funding options. Key themes from the public survey include an emphasis on the importance of traffic safety, a desire for more frequent public transit service, and an increase in bike and pedestrian infrastructure. As a result of the pandemic, there were also many comments received about the desire to embrace telework opportunities and the need for greater broadband connectivity. When ranking the quality of the existing transportation system in the Madison area, respondents ranked accessibility by car as the highest, accessibility by walking or biking as medium, and accessibility by public transit options as the lowest. Survey respondents indicated that maintaining existing infrastructure, improving and expanding public transit, and reducing the impact of climate change were the most important transportation issues, while reducing congestion and implementing technology improvements were less important. Also, we launched an interactive map commenting tool at the end of August that allowed people to view the existing system by mode: bus, bicycle, pedestrian, and auto, and to insert comments where appropriate, including suggestions for new facilities, safety concerns, evaluation of existing facilities, as well as features of the existing system that respondents particularly liked. This map received over 1,300 comments. 181 comments were marked as pedestrian comments. 47% of these relate to a roadway crossing and 43% related to a missing connection between existing facilities. 65% of pedestrian comments were flagged as a safety concern. Comments were concentrated in the urbanized area, frequently called for new sidewalks, curb cuts, pedestrian crossing signals or signage, and reduced crossing distances. Bicycle facilities or needs were the subject of 391 comments, the highest of any mode. 64% of these comments called for new or improved facilities, 14% related to roadway crossings, 7% to B-cycle facilities, and maintenance, road design, and other comments each accounted for 5% of comments received. 63% of comments were flagged as safety concerns. Comments were concentrated in the urbanized area, although many new or facilities in need of repair were called out in rural areas and outlying communities. Many comments suggested connections or extensions to existing separated pass or bike lanes. Crossing suggestions included operational and design modifications to existing facilities. Transit received 117 comments, of which 50% related to intercity buses or rail, including light rail, commuter rail, and Amtrak stations. 30% of comments related to a particular route or bus stop, and 6% related to commuter service. Comments were categorized according to the coverage ridership trade-off being explored in the Metro Transit Network redesign process, with 9% of comments requesting a minimal level of service in relatively low density areas consistent with the coverage scenario. 4% of comments suggested improvements related to increased service frequency on high density corridors, stop consolidation, or other ridership related subjects. Safety related comments relate to snow removal, roadway crossings to bus stops, and signalized rail crossings. The roadway comment map received 362 comments. 60% of these comments were flagged by commenters as safety concerns. Many comments called out concerns with intersections and other roadway design and operational issues, such as needing turn lanes, speed limit concerns, and traffic signal timings. Commenters also expressed interest in adding new access to the interstates, the North Mendota Parkway, and a southern route to bypass the Beltline. The map received 216 comments on lines drawn in by commenters. Bicycle comments were almost universally new routes or facilities, with some maintenance issues on existing facilities. Roadway comments were largely related to new connections, roadway design, and maintenance. Almost all pedestrian line comments call for new connections such as sidewalks or connecting paths. Almost all transit comments relate to commuter rail or light rail. Other comments include noise and policy issues and ferry service across Lake Mendota. I am now going to pass it over to Ben Lyman and Bill Holloway to review our draft public transit and bicycle facility plans.
Thank you, Colleen. All right. So jumping over to public transit, as you can see in this chart on the far right, while ridership declined dramatically with safer at home orders in early 2020, Metro continued to provide essential transportation services for a disproportionately high number of transit-dependent, lower-wage workers who could not work from home. Areas with the smallest decline in ridership were those with concentrations of lower-income, minority, and zero-car households. Ridership began to recover this past spring, but full recovery is expected to take years. There are two major current transit initiatives which the future planned regional transit system is being based on. The first is bus rapid transit. The service plan for BRT, shown on this map, includes the main east-west route in red, a second east-west line in blue that would run between downtown and the city of Middleton, and a north-south line in green. The second initiative is a major redesign of the bus system built around BRT as the high-frequency core. BRT includes the characteristics you see listed here. Much of the east-west corridor, which is phase one, will have center running bus lanes in blue on the map, with the current side running bus lanes throughout the downtown campus area in red. The east-west infrastructure corridor improvements will be completed in 2024, with service starting in the fall of that year. Infrastructure improvements are planned to be added in the north-south corridor in the coming years. Planning for that will begin in the next 2 years. Although individual BRT routes will run every 15 minutes, in the core of the system, multiple routes will overlap and provide less than 10-minute service frequencies on weekdays. The Metro Network redesign is redesigning the route network to support and work with that BRT system, and also to find the right balance between the two competing service goals of generating maximum ridership and providing maximum coverage. As part of the network redesign process, two network service plan alternatives were developed, one focused on ridership and the other on coverage. A job access analysis of the two alternatives and the existing system was then conducted to calculate how far people could get and thus how many jobs they could access from home in 45 minutes when combined with walking, waiting, riding time to destinations, and of course, any transfers that are required. The ridership alternative provided the greatest access gains as shown down in the yellow box in the lower right. Because it performs the best in improving access, the recommended service redesign will be based on the ridership alternative per the direction of the Madison TPPB, with slight modification to improve coverage in select areas. This requires reducing frequency in some corridors shown here, at least in the short term, to stay within the budgeted number of service hours. This shows the schedule for BRT and the transit network redesign. Phased implementation of the network redesign will start next year. The east-west BRT corridor construction will occur in 23-24, with BRT service in all corridors starting in 2024. Construction of the phase 2 north-south BRT could potentially start between 2024 and 26. This is the draft planned conceptual regional transit system with BRT routes in red, express commuter routes serving outlying communities in blue, and local routes in orange. Potential additional BRT routes include one serving the southwest side and one serving the east side. This map shows how frequently buses on particular routes will run during the AM and PM peak periods. More frequent routes are shown where they overlap with less frequent routes. Our environmental justice areas are shown in orange and green. One can see that most of them are served by service every 15 minutes. This is a frequent service network in red with at least 15-minute service all day. This level of service is required to make transit more convenient and more competitive with driving. So these are routes where multiple overlapping routes will add up to provide frequent service. It's not necessarily that a single route is providing that bus going by every 15 minutes. Access analyses conducted on the 2019 Metro Frequent Service Network, which is defined as 4 or more buses per hour throughout the day, the draft 2050 Frequent Service Network, which we were just looking at, and the draft 2050 BRT network show marked increases in access to these high-quality transit networks, with the percentage of households in the MPO planning area within 1/4 mile of frequent bus service growing from 18% in 2019 to 32%, which is 275% growth. And the percent of jobs within 1/4 mile of frequent service growing from 33% to 42%, which is 185% growth by the real numbers. There are other transit service models and supportive facilities that we're also looking at and considering for the future, such as shared ride taxis or transportation network companies, so-called microtransit, or all other types of transit service that can make sense in particular areas that don't have sufficient density for bus service. They can also serve first mile or last mile connections to the bus system. Mobility hubs are places of connectivity where different travel options, such as walking, biking, transit, TNCs, and other shared mobility options all come together. And I'm now going to turn it over to Bill Holloway to review the draft bicycle plan.
Thanks, Ben. So this map that we see here shows the future planned bicycle network. The planned facilities shown were gathered primarily from reviews of local plans and discussions with our local partners. This map shows missing links in the current bicycle network serving existing development. So these are what we would call immediate needs to bridge existing gaps. And those that are programmed to be addressed in the next 5 years are shown in the orange color. And these include a section of the Cannonball Trail just east of Fish Hatchery, which will connect to the Wingrove Path. And of the missing links we've identified, this map shows those that would connect our environmental justice areas in green with employment areas shown in gray. This map shows the planned future regional network with primary routes in red and orange and secondary routes in blue. The primary routes generally serve longer trips and connect regional destinations and communities, while secondary routes fill in the gaps in the network and tend to serve shorter trips and more local destinations. They also include some arterial roadways with higher traffic volumes, but which are equipped with bicycle facilities. So this is a screenshot of our low stress bike route finder, and building out and connecting the low stress bicycle network shown in blue tones on the map is a major focus of the MPO. Low stress routes are those that most adult bicyclists would be comfortable using. And the percentage of the regional bike network that is low and high stress is an MPO transportation system performance measure. And the planned network improvements over the coming years are expected to substantially increase the percentage of the regional network that is low stress and reduce the percentage that is high stress. High traffic speeds on some regional routes make it likely that some sections will continue to be high stress in the future. This is a screenshot of the MPO's pedestrian facilities geodatabase that we've created over the last few years. The pedestrian network includes sidewalks, multi-use paths, crosswalks, curb ramps, and signals. And finally, this map shows sidewalk coverage on the regional roadway system. We will be updating a map from the current plan highlighting priority regional roadways for filling in sections of missing sidewalks. And now I'm going to pass it back to Bill Schaefer.
Thanks, Bill. So going to talk about roadway facility needs. So we're still finishing up the analysis of both current and future needs related to our regional roadways. So we don't have recommendations at this time. So first off, pavement conditions. Many roadway projects are driven by pavement condition needs, emphasizing the importance of determining cost-effective maintenance and improvement strategies to extend the life and serviceability of the roadway network. Pavement preservation activities usually follow a standard process, assuming timely preservation improvements. Most roadways designed to last up to 60 years before they need to be completely reconstructed. However, there are several factors that influence pavement life, such as timing and type of maintenance and preservation activities, weather, traffic volumes, vehicle weight, and soil conditions. To achieve that roadway life, resurfacing or reconditioning activities are typically necessary 15 to 20 years, 25 years after initial construction and several more times before the end of that lifespan. This map shows current pavement conditions on the regional roadway system. Protecting the safety of all roadway users is a top priority. The Safe Systems approach, which is being adopted by the City of Madison and also other communities as part of Vision Zero initiatives, recognizes that drivers may make mistakes, but roadway design can improve driver behavior, and reduce the severity of crashes that do occur. As mentioned, we are currently working with the University of Wisconsin Traffic Operations and Safety Lab staff to analyze intersection safety and screen for locations where safety can be improved through a combination of low-cost strategies as well as larger standalone safety projects. The project will also include a tool for assisting local communities in selecting cost-effective countermeasures at these problem intersections that are identified. While not widespread, traffic congestion is a problem in certain corridors, and some roadway capacity expansion projects will be needed to serve planned growth. This map shows 2019 weekday AM 2-hour peak period traffic congestion on arterial roadways as measured by peak period travel speeds compared to other times of the day. Travel time reliability is actually even a better measure of congestion, since roadway users do expect a trip to take longer during peak rush hour versus midday, but they prioritize in particular the predictability of that travel time. The MPO's congestion management policy prioritizes strategies that eliminate peak period vehicle trips through combination of things: land use changes and other travel demand management strategies like flexible work hours and telecommuting, improvements to transit and bicycle and pedestrian networks, which can result in a mode shift, increasing auto occupancy by encouraging ride sharing, and improving traffic operations through traffic signal and intersection improvements and other so-called system management strategies before we consider road capacity expansion options. I'm now going to show the results of the initial travel forecast modeling we have completed this far. We're still early in the process, and this is all preliminary, but wanted to review with you some of the preliminary results so far. So a key part of the regional transportation planning process is projecting future travel based on planned growth, transportation network changes, and other factors influencing such growth. In the future, these could include autonomous vehicles, increase in e-commerce, as well as potentially long-term increase in telecommuting. This allows evaluation of the impact of planned and potential transportation system improvements on regional travel patterns and the performance of the system. Consistent with the MPO's congestion management approach, this includes also factoring in planned transit and bicycle improvements that we just reviewed, as well as potential improvements to roadways. The region is expected to add almost 200,000 people by 2050. This map shows areas with planned significant growth in households and the number of anticipated new households for the larger communities in the metro area based on the scenario that was developed for the Regional Planning Commission's Regional Development Framework. The growth scenario is based on local plans and framework strategies, which include prioritizing growth in redevelopment areas and centers and corridors and building complete neighborhoods. Dane County is anticipated to add close to 100,000 new jobs by 2050. This map shows areas of anticipated job growth and the number of new jobs for larger communities in the metro area. The travel generated by this growth is what is being forecasted. We are just beginning to run different modeling scenarios now. For all of them, we will include planned future transit and bicycle improvements that we just reviewed with you. For this first scenario, we just add roadway capacity changes that have occurred since the 2016 base year of our travel model, or projects that are scheduled to occur in the next 5 years. These include the interstate expansion, flex lane project on the Beltline to allow shoulder running during peak periods with high traffic congestion, and some local arterial projects, such as those on County Trunk Highway M on the west side and the north side, and County Trunk Highway PD or McKee Road on the southwest side, and Pleasant View Road. These projects also include capacity reductions in a couple cases, one on Odana Road, which was recently reduced from 4 to 3 lanes, and off-peak capacity reductions on East Washington Avenue, which will be implemented in conjunction with the BRT. Finally, we add to the network future planned collector streets or street extensions, which are identified in the brown color, which will serve new development and help distribute traffic from the main arterial roadways. We then see where there are remaining capacity issues. And again, consistent with MPO policy to manage congestion first through travel demand management and system management before considering road capacity. So this map shows the weekday traffic volume increase on roadways from projected from 2016 base year to 2050, with those in red, mainly the Beltline, Verona Road, interstates, and US Highway 151 projected to increase by more than 15,000 vehicles a day. Roadways forecast for growth in traffic by over 10,000 vehicles a day include Stoughton Road, Northport Road on the north side, US Highway 14 to the south, and County Trunk Highway PD on the southwest side. We also have a 2035 growth forecast year, and we'll be looking at that scenario for shorter term needs, especially since there is more confidence in forecasting growth and travel for that shorter 15-year period. This shows the forecast year 2050 level of service on regional roadways. Level of service is a method used to describe the operating conditions of a roadway or intersection based on factors such as speed, vehicle flow, maneuverability, delay, and safety. The scale ranges from A to F, with A being completely free flow and F being forced or breakdown flow. On the map, roadways at level of service D are in blue, and those forecast to be at level of service E or F are in red. These are generalized roadway segment service levels based on daily traffic volumes. So these are for planning purposes. And obviously, before projects are planned and designed and completed, more detailed analysis is required. You can see from the map, there are obviously a lot of roadway segments that are in that LOS E or F category with the projected future growth. Level of service D during peak periods has in the past been considered acceptable, and more recently, even level of service E is viewed as acceptable for peak periods, given the costs and negative impacts of roadway widening on other modes of travel. Roadway capacity issues on roadways in the isthmus and radial arterials leading to the isthmus, such as University Avenue, Monroe Street, Park Street, John Nolan Drive, as examples. Roadway capacity is not an option, not acceptable, given environmental and land use impacts. The same is true for some other corridors as well. We will be testing other scenarios and additional capacity increases to examine impacts on congestion, regional travel patterns, and vehicle miles of travel. These are some preliminary statistics from our model for that first scenario. Vehicle miles of travel is expected to increase from 14.5 million per weekday to almost 20 million with the planned growth. With the planned future transit system improvements, weekday public transit trips are forecast to increase from around 54,000 in the base year to almost 92,000 by 2050, a 68% increase. The share of trips taken by transit, bicycle, or walking is expected to increase. While that increase isn't particularly large, especially for transit and bicycle trips, keep in mind that these statistics are for the whole county, and much more significant changes would occur in the urban areas, particularly in certain corridors in the city of Madison. We will also be running some modeling scenarios to test potential impacts of these drivers of change, most notably connected autonomous vehicles. Among the likely impacts include reduced parking cost, increased freeway capacity, decreased value of time as people can be doing other things while they're traveling, and increased non-work trip making. We are also planning to test policies such as increased cost of driving and parking to see what impacts these may have on vehicle miles of travel and congestion. The plan will also address other modes and strategies such as specialized transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities, interregional travel via bus or potential train service in the future, freight movement, and travel demand management. Looking ahead to next steps. So again, this is our schedule. We'll be finishing up our evaluation of roadway needs based on traffic safety study being completed, our travel modeling and other analysis, and working with our partners in the region. And we'll be making any final refinements to our transit and bicycle plans, and then we'll be developing strategies and other recommendations addressing these modes and the other plan components, and putting that all together into a draft plan to be released early next year. We will also be completing financial and environmental analyses of the plan. In terms of public engagement, we will post maps of the draft roadway, transit, and bicycle plans on the website early next year for comment through the mapping tool. We will also post other plan materials as well, including draft recommendations. We then plan to have a final series of public meetings, likely in March, and then finalize the plan for approval by the MPO board in early May. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to turn it over to our intern, Neil James, to go over any of the questions that we have received so far in the Q&A.
Thank you, Bill. And so we've already got a couple of great questions in the chat and Q&A so far. And we welcome any more questions that you'd like to put into the question and answer tab on your Zoom link. So for the first question we have a participant who'd like to know more about the Tier 1 and Tier 2 equity areas shown on the transit network map that was identified in the presentation.
Ben, you want to take that one, or Bill?
Sure. So we first developed these, the Tier 1 equity areas were the first focus, and they had a more involved process. Basically, we had the area divided into these zones, and we used census American Community Survey data on income, along with 2010 census data for race and ethnicity. And we basically assigned points to each zone if they had more, say, a higher concentration of low income and or minority residents than the MPO area at large. And then the zones that had a certain number of points reached that threshold and were in our those tier 1 areas. So in order to be a tier 1 area, you had to have elevated levels, both of low income and minority people. And then for tier 2, it's a much lower, bar. I believe you had to have higher than the MPO average concentration of either minority residents, i.e. People who are not non-Hispanic white, or low-income residents. And we have this methodology is written down, but so we have more information for you on the specifics of that.
So we have another question come in about the bus network redesign. So the question reads, the bus network redesign only looks at existing roadways and connections. For a long-term plan, you would ideally be looking at potential future transit connections. For example, in order to provide good transit service to Allied Drive area, there should be a bus connection of Raymond Road bus line across Verona Road /151 to the Allied Drive area. Another example would be to provide a bus connection south of the Beltline to connect the two portions of Badger Road and Ski Lane near the mobile home park and hookah bar. How will the regional plan be identifying these long-term connections, and what would there be that benefit to transit?
Looks like Bill is moving us back to, oh, I thought you were actually going to the roadway connections one. So this is drawn on the same network that our future roadway connections are. And so little things like the deviation of Sigilco Road on the far east side, you can see is shown in the local service extension of BRT in this map. And that's not a road that currently exists. That's a future road. So the easy answer is that we did in this exercise draw bus routes on roads that do not currently exist, but they are in our planned future network. That said, some of the connections, I'd have to look more closely at some of these examples that were given, so I do appreciate that. I don't know that we have a whole lot of new connections over the Beltline, for example, connecting different areas. Certainly, you know, there are some great reasons to connect that Raymond Road area. You know, is it going to happen? I work on the transit side of this, not on the roadway side. So I'll have to go back to the team and look at where we are with those types of connections. But the easy answer is that there are future roads that do not currently exist that we have buses running on in this network.
Yeah, and I would just add that that there are some potential crossings of the Beltline that have been looked at. We don't show them here, but we will show those as at least things to continue to look at. Some of those crossings, some initial investigation of those was done as part of the earlier Beltline study, and those will be continued to look at. And I agree that that would be highly desirable, both from a transit service standpoint as well as a traffic circulation standpoint. Difficult, obviously, adding in a new connection like that is difficult politically, because you got folks that would be directly affected by that. But those are things that will be looked at, and also just to point out that this is conceptual map transit routes. Typically the planning for transit routes is a couple years or shorter. And so, but I think the point's well taken that there are some potential for some important new connections even beyond what we've shown here. And that's something that we'll likely do as part of our travel modeling as well, as to add in some of those. I actually don't remember whether we had included a beltline crossing in our scenario one modeling analysis right now, but looks like I don't think we did right now, but that is something that we will look at, and I'm sure will be looked at as also as part of the next phase of the beltline study.
Great, thanks for that, Bill. And we do have about 2 more minutes, I think, scheduled for this meeting. So if there are any other questions, feel free to direct them to the Q&A, or if you would like to raise your hand, we can always unmute you and have you ask the question verbally if you would like. We did receive another question from an anonymous attendee asking if the results from the MAP survey or comments are available to the public. Our MAP survey comments can be viewed on our Conveo website on an ArcGIS page, and our public survey comments are also available on that same website. And we'll give it a couple minutes and see if any more questions come in, or if anybody would like to raise their hand to unmute themselves.
I'd just add that we are still working on processing all of those comments. Oh, hey, sorry, my microphone was up by my ear. We're still working on processing those comments and tabulating them and trying to get them in a digestible format. So we will be releasing, more sort of detailed descriptions of those map comments in the future, but it's a lot of comments to sort through and to try and put in a digestible format.
We'll also be passing on the comments to local transportation staff as well, and planning staff, just because there were quite a few comments that were at a level of detail really beyond the scope of the regional transportation plan. So we'll be passing those on to those communities to be able to review and respond to. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question you want to ask verbally. Be happy to answer a question.
We did have a question just now come in through the chat, but a question asks, when we'll be able to access a recording of this meeting and the presentation slides?
Definitely by next week, if not before, but for sure by end of before Thanksgiving. Put that way. Looks like we got a question from Philip McCown. Let's see. I will. Yep. I think I've got you unmuted there.
Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Question. My family and we live in Sun Prairie. And I don't know, if you guys know this or not, or if, something I'm always curious about. We ride bikes a lot and we end up in Madison. And especially I guess it would be the south side where you're kind of Seminole Park, the Cannonball bike path into Fitchburg and all that. And then we also ride mountain bikes. And I really love that part of riding, like in that whole area is really great. So one issue I have, or thing I'm always trying to figure out, is like when we might expect to see, better connections into Madison from the east side of town. So Cottage Grove, coming into Madison right now is really not a great experience. You end up with a lot of car traffic, that kind of stuff, on the east side of town. by like American Parkway and stuff. So we have some pathways, just not really good connections, I would say. So just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree that there isn't a great connection into Madison from Sun Prairie right now.
Right.
We have plans. You know, there is a planned future regional route which would connect in from Madison. There's one piece of that, which is overpass of State Trunk Highway 30, which connects to a path with an overpass of Stoughton Road.
Yep.
That will get folks up to the East Town area, and that's a project that we just recently approved for funding in the next few years, but then still need to get that out to Sun Prairie under the interstate, at least to City View Drive. The current route really is here, which is, you know, High Crossing Boulevard, but
Yep.
admittedly not the most. There are bike lanes on High Crossing, but getting through that area is not the most bike friendly. So, and another planned option is to get to through American Center, and there is a planned future grade separated crossing of the interstate on the west side of American Center, but those are long-term projects.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a while, but
Yeah. Unfortunately, right.
there will be. I mean, there is going to be more funding available in the future for bicycle projects, and certainly that's something that I would communicate with your alder in the city and others, is the desire for that. I know they also just they do have a bicycle committee if you're interested in getting involved in that, and kind of working from the inside, but appreciate your concern, and your
Yeah,
comments.
and, I was gonna say, yeah, I am aware of that committee and do know some of the people on that as well. So I know it's kind of being worked on from the city side. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. And in a similar vein, we had a question come in from an anonymous attendee. Other than the BRT development in 2024, when are the bike and other transit network projects planned to begin?
There are some that are already programmed. The one I just mentioned. There was a couple. Let's see if there's some map that has the. So I guess we got the missing links map here, so you can see some of the projects in the dark orange. So these are projects that have funding, either federal funding or in some cases just local funding. They're in the community's local capital budget that are planned to be done in the next few years, next 5 years. So this is one we mentioned. This is really a key missing link here to the Cannonball Trail, the Wingara, and the rest of the Madison. This is also an important link. So there'll be a path built in here, which is the lake loop. It's kind of the missing link for that lake loop. This is the project I mentioned earlier, which would connect to this route here, that will get you up into the Easttown area, but not across the interstate. For the person from Sun Prairie, this is a piece of what I was talking about. So a planned connection from the path in Sun Prairie to the American Center. And then, I mean, you can get across here and down on Portage Road, but there is the planned grade separated crossing of the interstate here, which would make that a lot more direct and more convenient. There's some other projects in Fitchburg here and one on the west side. And then this is part here of a the North Mendota Trail, and the rest of that, this piece here along M, and then along this part of M will all be done as part of the roadway project scheduled for construction in 23-24. So that will provide an off-street, completely off-street route around the north side of Lake Mendota, which is very popular recreational route. So, and others hopefully in the 5 to 10 year time frame. Any other questions?
Not seeing any more questions in either the chat or the Q&A. So I think we'll wait a minute or two to see if any last questions come in, but we're almost at time, I think. So.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, we'll have the slides and the recording up. I know there's a lot of information presented, a lot of maps, and give you a chance to look at that in more detail. As I mentioned, we will either later this year or beginning of next year, we will have the planned facility maps up on our plan website in an interactive style, so that you can zoom in and see things at higher level of detail, and we'll have that commenting tool up as well, so people can comment on plan facilities or studies or things that have been identified in those. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in, and stay tuned for more to come.